Hi, Joshua. Welcome to the NTM Growth Marketing Podcast. I'm excited to be speaking with you today.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to talking.
Joshua, let's start off and hear a little bit more about your organization. What is your role at the company? What does a day in Joshua look like?
Yeah, so we are Beltway Media. We are fractional chief communications officer, and we provide, that fractional chief communications, leadership. It's something for, founders, for, small, medium-sized businesses, startups, really anything that, has a need for that communications function. Largely, it's, you know, founders who and, original early employees who've taken on that, communications role, that marketing role, because it was a two-person company and they were there. They were the original, engineer, founding engineer, so they could handle the website. So they got stuck with doing this years past when they should have. What we do is a little different than, say, a chief marketing officer, which is people are more familiar with, or that chief brand officer, which people are also a little more familiar with. What we do is we are focused on shaping perception, building and maintaining trust long term. So it's integrated big picture views of how messaging impacts your reputation, your growth, your stakeholder confidence. So very simply, the marketing officer, CMO, they're driving leads. Really important for business, important function. Your chief brand officer, they are responsible for polishing your look. Very important for a business that be polished. We are working with those roles, those functions, and taking that bigger view.
How did you get into this type of work?
Completely accidentally. I
Tell
started
us a
my
little more.
career as a journalist. I went to journalism school. I wrote my graduate thesis on 400 years of American, journalism for culture, and then left journalism thinking I would go back to being a freelance reporter, go back to a full-time newsroom, at some point. That was a decade plus ago at this point, and I'm doing this now, So there was no day where I thought this is what, I'll be doing a fractional communications leadership. It was project after project where I noticed you had people who needed someone who could bring a tech knowledge and the content knowledge and the strategy knowledge, especially with small businesses where they don't have that 40 hours per week need for that full-time person, but still need it done.
And I'm using these terms a little interchangeably, but tell us a little bit about a communications and marketing strategy you've been working on this year that has proven to be successful.
Yeah, and I use them interchangeably too, because those you used to have marketing firms and advertising firms and
Mhm.
PR firms. We've blended a lot of those in the last couple decades because what people consume is really much more blended, and that's
Mhm.
where this role comes from. But back to your question, what's been proving successful? I'll tell you, it's email newsletters.
Really?
People kind of see it as outdated. It's pretty one directional. I send you a newsletter. But when you have a good list of people who've opted in and it's targeted and they're engaged, it works. I use them with clients who tell me, people wrote back to the newsletter because I don't see the responses. They go directly to the client's email address, in many cases, or, an inbox that I don't monitor. It's monitored by them. And they'll tell me, we got responses. People, need, consultations for their projects. They're calling us, and that's great to hear. We love hearing that it works, but people engage with those emails much more than a lot of business owners and business leaders think they do in almost 2026.
So probably today, I want to say I probably have had six newsletters sent to me.
Yeah.
I'm positive I sent five of them to spam. And I know I read my buddy Scott Schindler's once a month newsletter. He keeps me engaged because it's a combination of some what's going on in his personal life. I don't get to see him that much. I like seeing what's going on with his wife, then a little bit of business. And I just like, hear from it. It feels very content driven and insightful for me.
Yeah.
But from your point of view, what are some components that allows that newsletters to stay in the inbox versus be like me and send 80% of them into my spam folder?
Well, the reason you're sending so many of them into spam is you probably didn't opt in.
That
It
is
was
that is true.
you signed up, for, you bought something from some company years ago, and you accidentally signed up for their newsletter. They're just using their customer list. So that's one reason, is have a good list. The other is, you kind of touched on this, and I say everything should be useful. Your newsletter should be useful. Your ads, don't do straight ads, make them useful. Everything you publish should be useful. So an example is, we have on our website these communications quick guides. They're 7 or 8 pages. They're basically short lists of things, for businesses in different stages to focus on, marketing, to focus on social media. There are different ones. We have more coming out all the time. We don't collect your email address to put on our newsletter list, to read them. They are just there on the website, they're free. So they're useful. Those can be turned into LinkedIn ads. Those carousel ads are, according to LinkedIn's data, one of the most engaging things that people, in terms of advertisements, that people use on LinkedIn, because they're clicking through. That's something that you can add and be useful. Whether you click, buy, or contact me or not, you know that you got something from Beltway Media and it's useful.
How has AI impacted your role in the last couple of years?
A lot.
That was a little bit more. Positive and
Positively
negative.
and negative. Yeah. I mean, that's everything, though. It is a tool. It is a helpful tool. It is only a tool. So there are simple routine tasks that are easier to do. Research, when done properly and responsibly, and information is verified, because it hallucinates. We all know AI hallucinates. Is easier and faster. It is a huge time saver when AI can do that. Everything for writing, everything from, emails to clients, or white papers, that full scale. It's different. It's easier in a lot of ways, because it can do a really good first draft. If you just treat it like a detailed outline, if you do that, and then the human goes in and works on it, it can do a pretty good job of kind of giving you that broad sketch of what you need. Would I trust it to put something out there, unedited, unreviewed? No, it doesn't provide a final product. One of the key reasons for that is, these LLMs, they're basically predicting what comes next, that next word, that next phrase. It's kind of the way I've heard it described by AI experts, who are trying to explain it simply. And all it can do is work out the information it's provided. So of course you can upload documents to it. You can say, view this website. You can do a lot. But if you're putting out original content for a product that doesn't exist yet, or a 2.0 or 3.0 that hasn't been released, it doesn't have that information unless you kind of give it the information. So sure, give it a spec sheet. It can do that, but it doesn't necessarily know what to do with it. So that's where it's very helpful, but it is just a tool. Like, spell check, many years ago was a tool that, teachers, I remember telling us, don't use spell check. I wouldn't have gone through school without spell check.
Right. Tell us a little bit.
It is much more powerful than spell check, however.
You mentioned that AI is just a tool, but I have to ask, what type of AI tools do you use on a regular basis, whether that's an LLM or a software that you're subscribing to, and how has it made your life more effective, efficient, or maybe even some negative things that you've encountered with some of these tools?
Oh, I got a lot of negative things because, like I said, it is just a tool. I've been using something called Abacus AI.
I haven't heard of that. What's that?
They've been around for a little bit. And it's an LLM. It has a deep agent. So it makes it possible for you to, I'm building one right now, building my own agents using their tool. What I like about it is it subscribes to different models through APIs. So it has ChatGPT, it has Claude, Grok, Gemini, a couple others, some specialized image models, video models are all kind of built in. So using it's what it calls its root LLM feature. Their AI, it's an AI talking to another AI, I think, selects which model would be best for your prompt. You can, of course, select manually. And if, it picks, Chat GPT 5 and you're like, this doesn't feel right, I don't like this, you could say rerun with Claude and pick which Claude model you want to use. So that has been really helpful. It also does some things like, I was building an agent it built the whole thing. And like, why isn't this working? It finally said, oh, we don't have the capability to do that. Like, we just built it.
I
So
want to
it kind of misses that.
I want to dive a little bit deeper into AI agents and what that means. So
Yeah.
this has come up a few times on the podcast, and I have admitted I don't know enough about AI agents. Just as Andrew, the individual, I actually had a call with HubSpot this morning. I'm speaking to them again on Friday because I've been learning about it through Marketing Through the Grain. Love that podcast, but tell us a little bit more, what is an AI agent? How is that different from an LLM? And even where do you think this is going heading into 2026? As I for sure think AI agents are going to be dominating the conversation, just like ChatGPT was a few years ago. Once people understand what an AI agent is and how powerful it's going to be.
Yeah. So LLM, yeah, and this is really broadly simplifying a lot of it, is, think writing. Large language model, it's writing. You put in prompts, it gives you results. It can be, anything from research. I know someone who used it to find where to get, a certain, kind of obscure product repaired. And they just said, where can I go to take, my widget for repair? And they gave a list of shops, types of, shops. They said in zip code, 12345, and it did a search. It's, that sort of thing that is, really good for. The agents, I think of as autonomous or semi-autonomous actors. So you can, create agents, and I use these myself for PR. Instead of manually searching for trending topics, for what reporters are writing about, for what's emerging in local publications and trade publications that might filter up in the next week or two. What are the big themes right now? That, as a human, it's basically running a bunch of Google searches and doing a bunch of electronic research. It's not a super hard task from a physical standpoint. It's typing. That's what an agent is really good for, because it can do all that on its own. And
so do
you
you need
could
to know how
say,
to
email me the report. No,
Do you need to know how to code to build an agent?
no. So it might benefit to have some coding knowledge. The one I'm building right now is an improved one for PR, and it tells me, online, 2000 something, we fixed this. It wrote thousands of lines of code based on just natural language prompts. I see some of the code, it outputs it. I could download it all if I wanted to run it locally, but you do not need to really know or understand it, but it is helpful, absolutely, to understand programming, to understand how it works. Even if it's just basic HTML, it's an understanding of how computers do that back end, stuff that kind of people don't see. It's helpful, not in any way necessary.
Got it. So Joshua, to wrap us up today, can you share best ways to follow up with you, learn more about your organization?
Yeah. So probably the best way, not surprising considering what I said worked before, is email. Just shoot me an email,jaltman@beltway.media. There's no .com. I'm also on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/in/Joshua I. Altman. And the company is /Beltway-media. So we contact us. There's stuff on our website, beltway.media. Try those free guides. They're there. We do not even collect an email address for people to view them and download them. There's a calendar link if you want to schedule something. That's, no obligation, no cost, just consultations, talk, about, your business, whatever you got going on. And we're always happy to answer people's questions.
Perfect. Thank you for your time, Joshua.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Before we jump into our next guest, we want to take a moment to tell you about our marketing mastermind cohort, No Typical Marketers. If you are a marketing executive looking to connect with like-minded professionals, this is the space for you. It's more than just a Discord group. It's your exclusive ticket to monthly roundtable meetings where we have group discussions about advanced marketing strategies, share insights, and solve real-world challenges like implementing AI agents into your marketing. Membership is exclusive and by application only. If you're ready to take your marketing game to the next level, apply now using the link in the description below. We can't wait to see you there. Now, back to the episode.
Hi, Roger. Welcome to the NTM Growth Marketing Podcast. I'm excited to be speaking with you today.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. I'm excited to be here. Talk to you and all your listeners.
Let's start off with hearing a little bit more about Roger. What are you up to these days? Tell us a little about you and your organization.
I'm the partner in charge of sales and marketing at schoolauction.net, which is a company that produces a single software product that helps school groups, church groups, and other community-based nonprofit organizations plan, manage, and run fundraising events. We've been doing this for about 20 years. It's been a wild ride.
What's the day of Roger look like doing sales and marketing?
Getting up and reviewing numbers first, seeing what came in the day before, what was happening there, where we're at in our performance, check the KPIs. Then usually I'm down at my desk by 6 o'clock or so, able to start taking calls. Because I'm kind of a one-man sales team at an office in Portland, Oregon, which is on one side of the country, and I got to take calls from the other side of the country. So I'm usually working by 6. Between 10, 12 phone calls a day, usually a couple of product demos scattered in there, a little bit of customer support, which I try to avoid. But that's the day.
So we did a pre-podcast dialogue and we were talking about marketing strategies, what's working, what's not. I would love for you just to talk about, marketing strategies, whether that's something recent in the past, learning lessons. Tell us a little bit about marketing strategies you've been working on.
I think the most interesting thing that I had to develop, the most interesting marketing strategy I had to wrestle to the ground was the idea of marketing to volunteers. I sell to a lot of PTAs. If you're going to sell to this year's fundraising chair at a PTA, you're not going to find them from a list broker. They don't go out and register in some directory somewhere. You have to use inbound marketing. You have to use things like, I don't like retargeting, but it's definitely effective. You have to put yourself out there to be discovered by the person who does not want to necessarily be identified with the role that you know that they are playing and that you want them to play with you. So, this year, one of the moms in 3rd grade is going to stick her hand up at the wrong time and say, I'll run the auction this year. That's who I need to talk to. Who is she? I gotta bring her to find me. So, and then you have to be very, very careful about how you engage people who are approaching you with their volunteer hat on. You always have to assume that there is a consensus buying center, consensus based always. Nobody's ever going to take responsibility for being the one who makes the call. And you have to allow them to make the decision amongst themselves. And you have to just kind of find ways to equip them so that they make the decision the way you want them to. This is the opposite of a traditional kind of dial for dollars sales approach for us, simply because A, we can't get the numbers, and B, people get really slippery. They get really slippery when they'd like to talk to you as a volunteer, but right now they're working on dinner, thank you, and that's their family and that's their family time. Or right now they're at work and they've got a meeting coming up. And yes, you're important, but you're not important right now. And when are they going to put on their volunteer hat? Who knows? They're going to give you an hour someday, at some point during the day.
Something that I think is really interesting here, and I just want to dissect it because earlier today, I was on a call and I was trying to understand who this person's ideal customer was. All I could extract was they're rich. So,
oh, wow.
That doesn't give you much as a marketer.
No.
Granted, that wasn't his background. And the way you're talking about your person is at such detail.
I
And
have
I think that is a key component of being a good marketer if you know your ideal customer like the back of your hand. So can you elaborate a little bit of how did you get to know this person at such a deep level and just why this is a very important thing as a marketer to understand?
persona-based marketing. I've been a fan of it for years and years and years throughout my career. When we started this company, it became fairly obvious pretty quickly that I could construct personas for target segments pretty quickly and pretty accurately. I know who runs auctions, these kind of school fundraising auctions, because at the moment we started the company, I was a PTA president. I was in those meetings where the fundraising people were talking about what they were going to be doing, et cetera. And I had that perspective on it. That gives me a bit of a head start in constructing a persona. If you have any personal experience you can bring into it, that helps. My business partners who were not marketers, but they were software developers, programmers, um, they similarly had that kind of a connection. Their wives were the auction chairs at their kids' schools. So they had originally built the software for their wives. So we had a little bit of a handle there on another persona that we could test, that we could refine, that we could develop. It did develop over the years. We learned a lot more details about generally how certain groups will bring their teams together, who's going to be on them, how they make decisions. I mentioned earlier that everything that involves spending money is a consensus decision. The best you can hope for is to have an advocate in the room when they're making it. But also, there's going to be a certain amount of understanding about who's taken on this volunteer job and how can you really help them knowing where their blind spots are. A lot of my customers, the people who reach out, who engage with us on behalf of their school or their church or their food bank or whatever it is they're working for, a lot of those people will um, be type A personalities and want to do everything themselves. And so they might charge into something where you know that, oh, this is not going to go well if you're doing this. And so you have to come up with the right kind of materials that you can surround them with that are both educational in nature, but maybe are kind of marketing positioning for you, where you're positioning yourself as, hey there, girlfriend. I know what you're going through right now. I've guided a bunch of others, people through it. Come on in here. I got something to give you. A lot of my customers, are also moderately insecure about this thing that they just volunteered to do because it's their volunteer gig. It's not their family and it's not their employer.
Right.
They're more confident in those areas.
Tell us a little bit how AI has impacted your role just in business and in marketing.
Um, AI, we can talk about AI in a couple of different ways, of course. When it comes to agents, when it comes to scaling business processes internally,
Can
um,
you talk about, I'd love for you to talk about agents because this is something I have a homework item to do by next Thursday. So I'm selfishly asking you this. And not many people on our podcast speak about agents. They keep it more in the LLM world.
yeah, agents are tricky to develop.
Mhm.
They're very tricky to develop. And we're experimenting at the moment. We've got some skunk work stuff going on, but oh my gosh, you start putting one of these things together and you really quickly realize that there's a lot of fine tuning to do, a whole
Mhm.
lot of fine tuning to do. So with regards to that kind of stuff and how can it assist our customers, we brought in an LLM or a chatbot that we trained on our documentation. And, we've debuted that as a support vector. And so far it seems to be going fine. If that allows us to maintain our current staffing in the support team and not have to increase it, that
Mhm.
would be a plus. Um, But the other side, which I'm more concerned about, and I definitely think we need to engage with as marketers more often in conversation here, is the fact that LLMs have started to and have the capacity to completely destroy search as a marketing mechanism. Now, they are enhancing search as a consumer tool. Nobody's going to deny that the search experience is kind of better in the AI overviews. It's like, yeah, that's
I like
cool.
it.
I like it too. I love it. But search had this other thing going for it, which was that you could optimize for it, you could play the game for it, you could get in there and with sweat and with strategy, you could work to advance your brand so that it had more visibility in the answers than some other brand. Barring that, you could buy ads. We all love AdWords and all of its variations out there because they were scalable, because they were easy to get started with, and because they were really insanely targeted. I don't see any equivalent to get my brand into the AI overviews. There's loads and loads of people that want to talk to me about the strategy of how you optimize your content for it. And we're doing so many of those things right
I can
now.
try to show you a podcast that's on my to-do list.
Yeah.
Are you a fan of My First Million?
Yes, indeed.
Here, I'll try to. Okay, it's there was an episode published a day or two ago. This is the HubSpot CEO. I think it's going to be a good one to check out.
Okay, dude. I definitely will. And, I've talked to the HubSpot guys a bunch of times too. At
You don't
this
believe it?
point, I'm going to be skeptical.
Yeah.
I want it to be true. I absolutely want him to have a blueprint that works that I can follow.
You think this is just a good headline for the podcast episode? I've not listened to it, so I cannot
sounds
confirm.
I think it's a great headline for a podcast episode.
It got me. It's on my bookmark list.
I'm going to listen to it too. I'm just going to listen to it with a bit of a skeptical ear because it's very easy right now to take your entire marketing budget and spend it on things that don't have a proven track record. None of this GEO or AI optimization has years of proven results behind it.
Right.
I'm willing to spend some money there, but I can't risk my entire marketing budget there. It's very expensive to engage these guys. I have to save some of it for things that I hope still work.
Correct. My friend who's a CMO, he talks about he gets approved an experimentation line item on his budget where I'm just making up this number, but $10,000 a quarter. It's to experimentation and see what happens. It's 1/20th of what he gets deployed.
Yeah, exactly. I do that too. I will usually try out a tool or two a year that, holds some promise. But it's got to prove itself after that initial experiment. I have to see something that I can count on.
So Roger, to wrap us up today, can you share links to learn more about you, your organization, best ways to follow up?
Absolutely. Start by going to the website, www.schoolauction, that's singular, auction.net, not a .com, although we do have the .com. That'll work too. And you can find out a lot there. You can get in touch with me. My email address is simply roger@schoolauction.net. I love to be found. I love to be talked to. But then I'm a marketer, right? Don't we all? aren't we all craving that kind of attention? So I'm there and happy to talk to anybody that's got a fundraiser that they might be wrestling with, or anybody that just wants to chew the fat about marketing.
Perfect. Roger, thank you so much for your time today.
I appreciate it, Andrew.